Welcome to the Telos Care podcast, where faith meets formation. Thanks for joining us today as we have conversations around biblical counseling and how to bring hope and healing to a hurting world.
All right. It's great to be here today with Dr. Khorin Elmore. Dr. Elmore is a licensed psychologist in the great state of California. And Dr. Khorin and I have had a great time talking about counseling and lay counseling ministries. And it was a wonderful event when she reached out to me, to Telos Care, to use our resources to build her counseling ministry. And so, Dr. Corinn, thank you so much for having this conversation. I'm excited for you to tell and share your story and your passion about counseling and what that looks like in the local church. So glad to have you on board today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Tim.
All right. So talk to me a little bit about your your passion, your drive to do counseling in the context of church ministry because you're in private practice, you have an academic background, you're licensed, you could do a lot of different things, but you've got a desire to bring this to the local church. Tell me a little bit about the heart piece behind this.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just first have to give the glory to God because if you would have asked me 3 or 4 years ago if I'd be working in a church setting up a lay counseling ministry, I would have thought you were crazy. Um, but yeah, I come from a background in kind of academia and research and kind of working in healthcare settings, which I loved. And I always loved developing new programs, but I started to kind of not have the passion for that anymore. And I didn't know why. Now I know it was God shifting me a different way. And so I was living in DC. I ended up moving back home to California, joining my family church, and really enjoyed it, really loved the people, and were kind of surprised that there wasn't any counseling services, given that we have a lot of counselors in our church. And I never thought I would want to do anything related to that, but I noticed it. And so I came to work at a nonprofit and I had been talking with the pastor, trying to figure out my next steps. And one day I was driving home and I felt something in my spirit say, find out if they want a counseling ministry. And I said, this can't be God because I don't want to do this. I have my private practice. And I was obedient. I contacted the pastor and I said, "Do you guys have a counseling ministry?" And he said, "No, do you want to start it?" And I was taken aback. And I said, "Let me think about it." And I prayed about it. And so I will be honest that I was very passionate about people in the church receiving care, but did not want to be the one, kind of like Jonah. I really didn't want to be the one to do it, but I was obedient. And immediately, as soon as I said yes to that, I went home to just think about some ideas. And I wrote for like 2 hours a whole plan about how it could
No,
look.
that's
And
great.
I hadn't seen that kind of passion in a while, and so then I knew this is where God was calling me to.
That is wonderful. I think for a counseling ministry, one, I think it has to begin with passion, vision, that desire that's in your heart. And then I think you've got the other component too, where your pastor in your local church believes in the ministry of counseling, and he's not intimidated to reach out to clinical licensed folks to do that. That I believe is completely the key because what we do, it's biblical counseling. Yes, we're training lay counselors, pastoral level of counselors, but it's clinically informed
Yes.
biblical counseling.
Yes.
And I think that's the key. And that was the key part of my journey as well, that I have a pastor and a church that supports this vision. And with that, you can see it come to pass, and you can actually see great things happen. So that's wonderful. Tell me a little bit about the culture of your church and ministry, because I think it's so important to understand for most folks that a counseling ministry can fit into so many different types of denominations and church culture. So talk to me a little bit about your church.
Yeah, so I attend Center Praise Ministries in Sacramento, California, pastored by Bishop Parnell Lovelace, and it's a non-denominational church, but I think a lot of the membership is kind of past Baptist or apostolic. And I think the thing that really made the counseling ministry a good fit is that our pastor actually has a degree in social work.
That
And
is
so he
fantastic.
thinks about how to help people. He did some micro level, but more on the macro level, but about how people need help, not just prayer, although prayer is amazing,
Mhm.
but actual skilled resources and soul care. And so I think having that kind of culture in the church where mental health is brought up a lot and counseling is encouraged and the pastor shares openly about how he receives services, I think it kind of already really was a nice way to set up us having it.
That is wonderful. And I would imagine your pastor having a social work background, that he had already been stepping into the community, making a difference with, trying to reach the community around the four walls of the church, right?
Absolutely. So we do a lot of missions work. We have a thing called Church in the Community where we literally have church in the community every Saturday. And then the pastor also is currently the president of a Christian college. So really trying to take it beyond the four walls of the church. And I think that's why it was pretty surprising that we didn't have this dedicated ministry because it's something that comes up so much in our church.
Absolutely. And once you start talking about counseling, the need for counseling, you start talking about mental health and the many challenges that so many families struggle with. Then the conversation gets broader, and people are really aware that there is indeed a mental health crisis. But
Mhm.
then what are we going to do about it? How are we going to attack this? And what is the church's role? And all of these questions. So now that your pastor has said to you, why don't you start this? And you're going to town now, you're writing all of these thoughts down.
Mhm.
What are some of the steps that you began to take in the initial phases?
Yeah. So I think for me, I already had experience in developing programs from scratch,
Mhm.
but not as much experience doing that in a faith-based setting. And so what I had learned from starting other programs is that you have to build a lot of infrastructure before you
Yes.
start to just try to go out there. And I also believed it was important for me to talk to other like minded people. So the first step I did was just go to different churches, different denominations all around our city, and people who already were doing things like this, and just find out, how did you do this? How did you pick this kind of program? What are you using? What are some of the things that get in the way? So I could really understand before I just try to use my own ideas.
I think that's great. So you're getting ideas, though you're seeing what others are doing. And what I found when I was in that space, I looked out there, and I could see that some were going to a full extreme of biblical counseling and had really no clinical support or uh, clinical infrastructure. There wasn't a practice management system. There wasn't a HIPAA compliant way to store notes. There was no training that revolved around those particular areas, but it was more or less just pastoral counseling. And then some of those folks were like extreme to the point where they saw clinical counseling as the enemy. And I thought, this is so unfortunate, and I think they're just misinformed because as a licensed clinical professional who also am a person of faith, I see that the integration just goes together so simply. And so part of my mission then began, I wanna educate pastors, and I wanna demystify counseling and psychology, and I want to bring theology and psychology together in a way that it diminishes neither and helps everybody. And so I began looking out there, and then I saw the other side too, where you've got good licensed folks that they have private practices and they're helping a lot of people and they identify as people of faith, but they don't integrate their faith in the services and the treatment. And so I think getting around and talking to others and searching out and seeing what others were doing uh, really opened my eyes to the need even more so. And it sounds like, you were on a similar journey where what's everyone doing and what are they not doing and how can we do this better, right?
Yeah, and I would say, yeah, like you talked about seeing some churches kind of going all the way to the pastoral side and maybe neglecting some of the clinical piece, but then the clinical piece kind of negating the pastoral side. And I would say the perspective I came from was a Christian who, grew up in the church. My dad actually happens to be a Christian counselor,
Okay,
um,
great.
who had a lay counseling ministry, but I was really more on the academic and, non-faith based side and sometimes integrated faith. And so I could lean towards that way. And so I was really trying to find the balance between what skills and what experiences have I had that are unique that could help this church while also learning what I don't know.
Absolutely. And I think anyone who has the passion to start a counseling ministry, I think that's the place that you have to get to be humble enough to say, I don't know everything. I need to learn from others. I need to reach out. I need to network and look at it all, the good, the bad, the indifferent. So now that you're talking to people, I'm tracking your journey, okay? So where do you go from that point?
Yeah, so I talked with several different types of ministries. So some that had one popular ministry, Stephen's ministry, that kind of
Mm,
is more walking alongside with people, but could be for
sure.
1 to 2 years. I talked to churches who had clinicians hired on staff. I talked to one person I actually found on the internet talking about how she was starting a counseling ministry, and she was a psychologist who came from academia. And I
Okay.
called a long shot, and she really helped me as well. But no one I felt none of the situations were exactly like the one I was going through. And so what I came away with is I really like the idea of a balance between faith, clinical, solution focused. After I heard everything, I think all of it's helpful, but I think my heart was really how can I help people quickly using faith and then also supporting them and empowering them to have skills to learn how to do this outside of here. And that's kind of what I landed with after hearing about everything.
Absolutely. And when you start looking online, especially, you see all different kinds of programs. And a lot of programs offer online certification as a biblical counselor and zero support. Just, here's your courses, here's your certificate, and you're off and running. And as a licensed professional, I thought, no, 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 no. We've got to regulate this. There's got to be supervision. There's got to be some standards, practices of ethics, and all of that. And so yeah, I can relate to that piece of the journey, and you learn a lot from folks. You glean some things, and there's some great programs like Stephen's ministry is wonderful, but it's very pastoral. So how do we bring in the clinical piece to that? So great as you're learning and you're exploring. Next steps. Where did you go from there?
Yeah, so after I kind of explored, I came to the idea that I really wanted to make this similar to the work that I had done in primary care, because I was really thinking of it as the church is a place where the sick and the well come, and everyone gets primary care. And sometimes we need referrals to specialists, and
Sure.
sometimes we just need to check in. And so that's kinda what I landed on, and so my next steps were to look at the logistics of how this could get started, and then pro doing a proposal to my church leadership team to see what they thought. So that process, I would say, took about 3 months. I also had to God had to work on my willingness, and my fear about doing something new, but I did a proposal. The pastoral team loved it, gave me great ideas
Great.
about how to choose people, and so my next step was, "Okay, what curriculum am I gonna use to train people?" There were so many out there, and I had no way to know kind of what would be the best fit.
So you're looking through curriculums, and I believe that's when our paths crossed, and
Yeah.
that was just wonderful because we were about a year into our program, and I had put our curriculum up online because I knew that as I was building this, that God had a plan to use this in other churches as well. And the plan for me was just to help others and to share the curriculum. And if we have a network of churches that are, practicing lay counseling from a biblical, clinically informed perspective, that we could all help each other. And that
Yeah.
was that was part of my vision. So you stumbled across us,
Yep.
Telos Care.
Yeah.
Tell me
Yeah.
about that. I'm not
Yeah.
fishing for compliments, but I'm curious as to your impressions and why you stepped to our neighborhood, so to speak.
So actually, I had looked at a lot of different programs before I came across Telos Care. And I found some great ones that had been around for a long time. But what I found was A, they were very, very expensive. And I think it was harder for a church that's just getting started to know, to support it enough for new people who've never done this before to see the utility and why they have to get these courses. But then on the other end, I also noticed that there wasn't much support on how to get the ministry started. So the curriculum's there, but I'm already a counselor. I know a lot about counseling. I needed help getting the ministry off the ground. And so I found only I found one place that I thought I was gonna go with, and then they said, "Oh, we don't do that anymore." Um, and so they recommended me to another place, which I thought would be helpful, offer some mentorship, and they said, "We will help you get it started, but we have to teach everything.
Okay.
So you don't really get to teach." And so that didn't feel like a great fit either. And so somehow, some way, God helped me see Telos was there. You guys were having a promotion, and so I was able to look at one of the courses with the
Mhm.
promo code, and I fell in love with it, and then I saw that you guys had a mentorship program, and I was like, "This is exactly what I need," and so I just sent out consultation email thinking it was gonna be like the other programs that I talked to, just a quick, they're telling me what they offer and we hang up type of thing, and, what I found was much more than I could even expect.
Great. Well, it was um it was great for us as well to have you on board, and I wanted to make everything available. So how long have we been working together now? Goodness.
Well, I would say maybe like fall 2025, so I would say 6 to 7 months, maybe 8.
Okay, 6 to 7 months. So what that means is that you've accessed the courses and that your entire volunteer base and pastoral base have had full access to our curriculum online. And what that means is you and I have been in consultation, sometimes weekly, sometimes monthly, but constantly through the process.
Mm.
Everything from policies and procedures to how to promote this to how to uh, figure out the nuances of working with the interesting personalities in the program, all of the rest of it.
Yeah.
So it's been a joy on our side too, and we're excited about about where you're going with the program and what God's going to do in Sacramento.
Yes, I did wanna make sure before we rush through it, I really wanted to talk about my experience connecting with you guys because that's part of
Yes.
the testimony of our journey. So, again, I've been talking to all these places and not sure, and there was always one thing that didn't work. And I had a meeting with you and Brian, who also helps with the program, and just talked about what I was doing, asked about what you guys had, and you all really encouraged me. I was still having some of that imposter syndrome, like, I don't know what I'm doing. And God just told me to do this. I know he's gonna work it out, but I don't know how. But being willing by faith to just say, God, if you want me to do it, I'll do it. And we just talked about you guys' heart to spread the gospel. And I had actually just finished a gospel course where I was really thinking about spreading the gospel. And we realized we just really both cared about people knowing about God. And I felt connected. You guys encouraged me. And I remember getting off the phone and telling my pastor, God has been providing everything I need. I had the best conversation with someone and I feel so excited about it. And you guys sent me information about mentorship. We talked about some of the barriers we might have to doing it. And you all like exceeded what I could have even hoped to ask for in
Oh,
terms of
goodness.
working with me. And that was a testimony I was able to bring back to my leadership team to say, I told you guys, I don't know how it's gonna work, but God told me to do this, and I know He has it. Here's one example. I found this great ministry. They're willing to help me with everything. And that is something that was one of the big faith things that helped solidify that we were gonna go forward.
It's wonderful. I'm so glad to hear that. And and you're doing something neat with the courses that I love. You are going through the courses with your counselors in preparation to the launch. And
Mhm.
so the first level of certification is for particular courses, for individual courses, and you've been walking with your volunteers and your core group together. I think that's just wonderful. I think it's such a nice way to do that. So that just is probably the highest compliment to us as well.
Oh, great. Yeah, they love it. And so, yeah, we've been because I'm also, I'm a clinician, but I don't have as much training integrating my faith. And so I wanted to make sure that if I'm teaching some of this stuff that I know it myself. And so we did a lot of rigorous selection to pick people who'd be a good fit and who were committed because I knew it was going to be a lot of time commitment and energy and seriousness to do this work. And we developed a 4-month training protocol where we go through each module in the courses, and half of the class is spent kind of reviewing the material, and half of it is spent just practicing skills. Really, so that our lay counselors can feel confident, but also that I know they have the foundation of knowledge to move forward.
I think that's great, because you are now not only supervising lay counselors, you are training them and you are mentoring them. And
Yeah.
so, um, that's really the core piece of our program. I think it's a guided care model. So I'm providing guided care to you, you're providing guided care to your people, and they will be providing guided care to the people they're working with. It's just a beautiful transition.
Absolutely. And we also, I've been able to get some other licensed clinicians to serve with me as mentors for some of the counselees, since we have about 20 on our team. And that's been great too. So it's kind of like I'm supervising them, they're supervising the lay counselors are working with the members of the church and going from there.
It's a well supported structure, and we're doing the same thing at our ministry, and that's just been a core piece of it. So I think to be successful in launching and starting a counseling ministry, you've got to have that key person yourself. In the beginning, it was me at our church, and and the person doesn't have to be a licensed professional. They can have a background. They can be a pastor that's pastored and counseled for some time. But you just have to have that commitment to building the ministry that is well supported, because
Mm.
this is not a ministry like other ministries. I mean, our counselors, they will reach out to me, they will call me, they will talk about cases. And then when we have our group sessions, we do a lot of group supervision as well. But they are very concerned about the people they're working with, and they want to get that support. So you've got to be really hands on.
Yes. Yes. And just very, I think, spiritually aware and very open to what the spirit is saying, because something that came up, which we talked about, Tim, was this is very important work, working with people's souls and restoring things through the Holy Spirit, and there can be attacks. And so, supporting people through that, because you have to kind of process some of your own issues or concerns while providing care. So, it's very intimate work.
Absolutely. And you're right. When you begin a ministry like this, you're going to help a lot of people. And the lives of the counselors are changed too, because I've seen so many people just step into their calling, and it's a new calling. It's a calling that they didn't envision before. And the enemy attacks. It is almost in well, not almost. It's inviting spiritual warfare into your life because you're doing something so life changing for so many people.
Yes. And just, we already have the victory. And so it is really helping to fortify our faith because we know we have the victory. We just may not see how. The enemy can just kind of put lies in your head or accuse you or make you think you can't do it. But the truth is, we already are able to do it with what God's equipped us with. So
We
I think
are.
fighting through that process helps you to even be a better counselor.
I do. And as you start integrating your faith with your clinical from your side, and then on the counselor side, what I'm seeing them, they're integrating the clinical with their faith. But for a clinician, it's the other way around.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once you start doing that, every time you look into your Bible, you're going to see the healing ministry of Christ in one way or another, and how the clinical and the biblical just marry so well. And
Mhm.
it just changes your perspective. And once you see that and the light clicks on, I promise you, there's no turning back. You will forever be altered in the way you think about the Bible and the healing of the soul.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would just say personally, because I also do hold a private practice and teach in a Christian counseling program, a graduate program. And I've noticed that I've never incorporated the work of the Holy Spirit or faith more in the 20 years I've been a clinician than I do now because I just see everything through that lens now. There's no separate between my professional
Right.
life and
Right.
my ministry. They're just very integrated. And my clients, I'm not listed as a Christian psychologist, but I'm a psychologist who's Christian. And my clients have been so grateful that I've integrated their faith with their sessions.
It is. It's wonderful. And in a clinical world, we talk about, things like grounding, right? I have found that prayer does so much to help us ground ourselves and our folks that we're working with. Another example is in the clinical setting. We many times talk about creating new neural pathways and a different way of thinking and reframing. And I see that the scriptures just abound with teaching about our thought life and the way we think and how we look
Right.
at life. And so for me, it's just it once you go there and God gives you that revelation, it just everything comes together. So I love the journey that you're on. I love what you're doing, and I am so pleased that you've uh, found our ministry and you're benefiting from the curriculum and the the idea also is that as you get grounded that we want you to contribute to course content and all kinds of things, so we just want to continue our ministry interaction over time because I think you're going to bring such a unique and powerful voice to tell us, and I'm excited for that.
Wow, thank
That
you.
energizes me. That's great. Um, so so talk to me a little bit about now that you're going through the modules with your folks and you've got 20 or so and you've got some licensed folks that are helping you kind of mentor and supervise. You're
Mhm,
getting ready for launch. What are the
mhm.
steps to launching this now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say there's kind of categories of steps. So
Okay.
there's the training part,
Yes.
right? Training the people, but then there's the physical setup of making sure all the logistics are in place to be able to launch. So, making sure there's space available, setting up the practice management system, getting people to help with administration. So, all of those things to make sure that it can actually happen, as well as setting up policies and procedures and thinking about how to advertise, making a website. So, these are things that the average ministry may not have to do or think about that can stretch you, but are very important. And so I would say the biggest thing I've learned is that strategizing and thinking before taking action has just avoided so much more delay and problems. So, like thinking about, okay, how do we want to do this before you actually just start doing it?
Absolutely. And what you're talking about is the visionary component of good leadership,
Mm.
which might be a new series of modules that we might tackle one of these days. Because what you're talking about is just good leadership. You have to have a strategy. You have to devise the steps far before implementation. Now, what a lot of folks may be thinking about this, if someone's listening to this, they're probably thinking, how much money is going into all of this? And, we're talking about a voluntary based ministry. And
Mhm.
so churches can build their program however they desire, but there there are numerous volunteer hours in your ministry and in my ministry. And so you really just have to have the passion, and you have to have someone who's given to it. This is a voluntary based program. And so what I have found, there are many churches that you alluded to a model earlier where they uh, have space and they utilize licensed counselors to provide the service, and they bill out or whatever they do. But that's not the model that really intrigued me. I wanted to equip God's people within the church to help the community and build the kingdom of God. I believe that all of us are, to use a phrase from going back some years, are competent to counsel. And I believe that God has given us the wisdom to do this. And it's the church's privilege and obligation to minister and engage and impact their community rather than sending everybody off or inviting hired help to do the work. I think,
Yeah.
I believe, I know that the church can do this. And we're seeing, we're a little bit further down the road than you were, of course, are right now, but we're actually seeing that happen. And and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing to see the church engaged in the healing process of so much trauma in our community, so much dysfunction in families, so many people that are hurting, that are really seeking and wanting help and not being able to find it. What we've found is that there are many people that were just not resourced. They didn't have access to counseling. They didn't have access to that. So we are finding that we're stepping in that gap and really filling that need.
Yeah, and just even empowering people to know that God has equipped us to fill that need. I think that's a huge piece that may not always be talked about when you look up how to develop a lay counseling ministry. There's some identity stuff that happens in stepping into your role as someone who can help other people and that the Holy Spirit has equipped. I think that can be a hurdle to get through when you're first starting this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's probably been why so many churches have not engaged in a ministry like this, because they think, well, the pastor thinks, well, I've not been trained, and I'm really not comfortable talking to somebody about their depression or anxiety. I'm more comfortable in the spiritual side of things. So what we're doing is bringing those two worlds together. We're equipping, and the result is people are getting helped. And both of us, both of our ministries, we believe in referring out, and so we have a referral process. So when someone comes in and they really need clinical help, we make those referrals, and you will find that too. I mean, if somebody comes in, they're dealing with deep trauma, and in your clinical brain that they probably need someone who specializes in trauma, perhaps offers an EMDR approach or something like that, refer them out. But then what I find in our ministry is that the folks that come to us, if they touch our ministry, they want both. And so there have been some folks that we've had that have come through with some significant concerns, and our our follow up with them is, we can see you on the spiritual side, but we want you to follow through with the clinical
Yeah.
recommendation.
Yeah, a
And
nice
so
balance.
we walk through side by side that way.
Mhm.
But it's great. So when are you looking to launch?
So we are going to officially launch July 6th, and we'll be starting to take referrals about a week before that. So we're really excited.
Okay. So, how are you going to get the word out about your counseling ministry?
Yeah. Ever since I signed on to do the counseling ministry about a year ago, the pastor has already been just bringing up more in church, things about the problems we go to and how it's good to seek help. So, been laying the groundwork that way. And what we're going to do is a soft launch 2 to 3 weeks before the ministry starts by kind of just meeting with the other ministries, talking about what we provide, if they see people that could be helped, so kind of internal marketing. And then a week before the launch, we're doing an announcement with a video presentation, and we'll continue to do announcements and reminders for several weeks after we launch. So we're kind of trying to do a build up where it's not a one time announcement, but kind of something that becomes part of the culture of the church. As well as the integration with the other ministries, I think is so key because people were getting helped some way before we started this. And so helping, working with them to find out what exactly people need help with. When people come up to the altar and want prayer, telling them we have something where people can follow up with you after this to support you. You don't have to just get
That's
this
okay.
5 minutes of prayer at the end of church.
That is amazing, and that's what you'll see. So when you start seeing those hours of counseling logged, you're seeing these are people that we're sitting down with, we're processing with, we're praying with, we're helping, we're supporting. And it's not just the prayer at the end of the church service. It is something that's more in depth and powerful and following up with that person. And so there's really no way to track these numbers that I'm aware of, right? But I know that probably our church retention is probably up 100% just because these are hurting people that have reached out, they've come, we're meeting with them, we're walking through life with them, and maybe probably before maybe they would have gotten discouraged and not come back or not think I can't find the help there or whatever, but they would have been the statistics of the individuals that come and slip through the cracks, right? I know that we're keeping so many of those folks. And so it's all good. I'm excited for the beginning and the initiation of your ministry. And my hunch is this: as you continue with this program, the other churches are going to see what you're doing, and you will be in turn mentoring and growing and helping other churches reach their potential in starting counseling ministries. And you are on your way to an incredible journey, and I'm just so happy that you have felt led to come our way and to do this together. So it's exciting stuff.
Very exciting. You're absolutely right. We have not launched yet, and I've already had several churches reach out that even heard that we were doing this and were like, "Can you help us start our ministry?" All
Okay,
across California already.
Dr. Corinn, our regional director.
Yeah. Yep.
It's awesome though. Once you catch this vision and you want to help others and you see your ministry multiplied in a unique way in other churches, it's very exciting stuff. So that being said, thank you so much for engaging in this conversation. Thank you for all that you're doing, and I just appreciate your ministry so much, and I'm so honored to serve alongside you. And I'm just excited, beside myself.
Oh. Well, thank you so much for your encouragement. As you know, sometimes I'm a little nervous, and you guys have just always been there supportive and reframe. It's not just the courses, which I love, but it's also the relationship. So I think that's
And
helpful.